Right. Well, I think we're just about ready to get started here. We have about 40 participants. So let's go ahead and start. So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for the County of Ventura Onxard Airport Runway Taxiway Pavement Reconstruction Project's third and final design public meeting. My name is Stacy Falcioni, and I'm from the outreach team, and I'll be going through some logistics just before we get started here. This meeting is about us sharing information about the upcoming construction schedule and giving you guys the opportunity to ask questions. This meeting is being recorded, so please be aware. Please also sign in through our virtual guest book link that's been posted to the chat feature there. I see some of you have added your names, so if you could just click on the link itself and fill out the form, that would be super helpful. And moving on, so we will be hosting a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So please kind of hold on to all of your questions and we'll make sure that we get to all of them at the very end there. Next, for those of you who are new to Zoom, I'll briefly explain how we will run today's meeting and show you how you can further participate. So we will be turning off our cameras during the presentation so that you can focus on the slides. And then while we go to the Q&A session, we'll be turning the panelist cameras back on so you can see who it is you are actually speaking to. We will take questions after the presentation in 3 ways. You can raise your hand by clicking on the Open the Attendees tab and click the Raise Your Hand feature. We will unmute your microphone so that you can verbally ask your question. There's the Q&A feature where you can enter your question here and we will read your question out loud. And then for those of you that are only able to call in, you can press *9 and we will call on you, and then you will unmute yourself by pressing *6 so that you can verbally ask your question. If at any time you are experiencing technical difficulties, just type in your question into the chat feature and one of our team members will work to assist you. Please only ask one question at a time so we can give everybody the opportunity to be heard. We also remind all participants to please be courteous and respectful in all of your comments. And with that, I'll pass it off to Chuck from Mead & Hunt, who will further introduce the team.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Stacy. First, I'd like to introduce the county team, which consists of Kip Turner, the Director of Airports, and Aaron Powers, the Project Manager. Kip?
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I see we've got about, looks like about 46 already tuned in and some still joining, so that's good. We're hoping to use this today as a platform to answer any final questions that all of you may have, to try to provide as much information as we can to the upcoming project that does appear to be aligning now with funding and everything that we're waiting on with the FAA. So we're excited to have the ability to do this project and better our airport and our runway. And this is definitely a good platform, and please take advantage of it today in trying to get all of your questions answered. And you've got the team here that can do it, a lot of experience here at the table. So we look forward to doing that. And with that, I'll turn it over to and see if Aaron Powers has anything she wants to add or if that covered it.
Yep, thank you. I think you did cover everything. We just appreciate the opportunity to provide information and answer any questions at the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Aaron. Back to you, Chuck.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thank you, Kip and Aaron. So from the Mead & Hunt, we're the design team. And for myself, Chuck McCormick, I am the project manager. And then we have Jeanette Larrera, she's the engineer of record. So the Mead & Hunt team will also be assisting during the construction of the project. From Ariano Associates, and you've already heard from Stacy Falcioni, she's the project manager. And then Elsa Argamanix, she's the senior project coordinator, and also Stevie Espinoza, the project coordinator. I'd like next to pass it off to Matt over at Javiation to introduce their team. Matt?
Thanks, Chuck. Hi, my name is Matt Gilbreth. I'll be the project manager for Javiation. Javiation will serve as the on-site representative for the owner during construction. I'll introduce Mike Quinn. He'll be the resident engineer, being on-site with the contractor throughout the duration of the project. Mike, why don't you introduce yourself and hand it back to Chuck, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. As Matt said, I am Mike Quinn. I will be the resident project representative during construction. So I'll be on site throughout construction, monitoring progress and schedule. And hand it back to you, Chuck.
All right. Thank you, Mike, and Matt as well. So next slide, please. So going over kind of why we're all here, and we've listened to your feedback of the first two public or tenant workshops, and we're here to share the information about the upcoming construction projects. So during this presentation, we're going to be going through the following items, which are the purpose of the project, and then a project overview and a description of the project, the bid results that the project has been advertised for bidding purposes, the funding of the project, the construction phasing, the construction schedule. Then we'll go into details on the rent relief and then the future project updates. And then finally, like as mentioned, we'll have a period so you can answer questions and we can provide response and answers for those to you. So next slide, please. So the project description, the project was designed and bid as a single bid package, but consisted of a base bid and two bid alternates. The breakdown was as follows: was the base bid, which consisted of the runway 725 reconstruction. Then bid alternate number 1 was the taxiway connectors, Alpha all the way through Echo reconstruction. And then the parallel taxiway Foxtrot reconstruction, which was bid alternate 2. So the work consisted, let's go back. I'm sorry, let's stay on that slide for a minute. So the work consists of removing of the existing pavement surface and excavating down to the subgrade, construction of new pavement section and crushed aggregate base course shoulder, application of new pavement markings, installation of an underdrain system and adjustments to the storm drain, and then installation of new runway edge lights, mouse F lights, which are the approach lights, and then new signs. So now if we can go next slide, please. So as far as we mentioned, the project was advertised for bids, and we had 5 bids that were received, and the bids were opened back on April 29th of 2021. As you can see in this chart, the bids were received and they were pretty close to each other. The basis of award for the project was the base bid plus the base bid transition. So the lowest responsive and responsible bidder was determined to be Sully Miller, and their bid was, for the base bid and the transition, was $12,274,001. Next slide, please. So for the funding of the project, the FAA and the project the grant comes from the Federal Aviation Administration, and the FAA has indicated to us that they'll provide a grant for the base bid and the base bid transition, which is for the runway portion of the work. The airport will have to pursue the connector taxiways and parallel taxiways at a later point in time. But again, that base bid, what the FAA is providing the funding for, is the runway portion of the work. So next slide, please. So the construction phasing, which will be for a full runway closure. During the construction of the project, then the runway 725 and all the taxiways will be closed to aircraft operations. There will be no airfield facilities available since all the nav aids, including items such as the PAPIs, the ILS, both the glide slope and the localizer, will be turned off. So now I wanted to pass it on to J'Aviation at this point. They're going to talk about the construction schedule. So I think that's going to be Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Chuck. Appreciate that. So construction is a 91 calendar days. Right now, we're expecting that construction to begin on August 4th, 2021. We are still waiting for the official grant offer from the FAA, which is really out of everyone's control on this presentation today, but we do expect to receive that later this week, which would allow us to start on August 4th. And given the 91 calendar days, that would put the completion at November 2nd, 2021. Following construction, the asphalt will need to cure out prior to grooving, and that is phase 2, which consists of 14 calendar days, and those would be consecutive night closures, and we're anticipating those for January and February of 2022. I'll pass it back to you, Chuck.
Okay, thank you, Mike. And next slide, there we go, thank you. So as far as for rent relief, back on January 26th of 2021, the Director of Airports was authorized by the Ventura County Board of Supervisors to offer rent relief to tenants impacted by the runway reconstruction for up to a 4-month period. So the rent relief eligibility and terms are the following. The rent relief would be available to each Onxard airfield tenant, commercial or private, that requires use of the runway. Waivers of rent would begin the first day of the project, requiring full runway closure. Waivers of rent would end the last day of full runway closure waivers of rent would end the last day full runway closure is required, limited to a maximum of rent relief in the amount that would not exceed the 4 months of a tenant's normal hangar rent. And then rent relief would not be offered for any temporary closure, i.e. an overnight closure, or for closures less than 24 hours. And then non-airfield based business tenants would not be eligible for rent relief. Finally, finally, for tenants to be eligible for the rent relief, the tenant must be in a good standing with the county. So the airport's fiscal division will automatically apply rent relief to tenants per the terms and eligibility of this. So next slide, please. So for future project updates, this presentation will be summarized at the upcoming Aviation Advisory Commission member meeting, which is tomorrow on July 7th. And then also again at the Airport Authority meeting, which is on Thursday, July 8th of 2021. Posts to airports regarding the project will be on the website, and also e-blast will be going out during the construction period of this project. So now at this point, we'd like to open it up for any questions that you might have. So Stacy, do we want to turn that back over to you, or?
Yes, thanks, Chuck. So Stevie, if you could turn on the cameras of the panelists and yourself included, and then you can take everybody through logistics here.
Thank you, Stacy. As Stacy said earlier, we are taking questions through both the Q&A feature and using the raise hand function. The raise hand function is going to be located in your Zoom panels. And then I'll call upon you, and then you can ask your question and once you unmute yourself. We also have some questions already queued up in the Q&A feature. Again, that is also located at the bottom of your screen in the Zoom panel, and we'll be taking questions through there as well. So I don't see any hands raised at the moment, so I will just go ahead and start with the Q&A feature. Looks like we have, potentially Chuck, this could be for you. We have a question from number 0989, and the question is, if Taxiway Fox is not being redone, why can't you make that a VFR only runway?
You know, we looked at that actually back in the early design phases. We had approximately 5 different construction alternatives to look at. One was shortening the runway to allow less than full length, in other words, keeping part of the runway open. But one of them we did look at of Taxiway Foxtrot used as a temporary runway during construction. But because of the FAA surfaces that have to be met, the FAA requirements, those were determined it could not be met. But we even reached out to the FAA for confirmation on that and received in writing that the FAA would not support Taxiway Foxtrot to be used as a temporary runway during the construction period. So we definitely looked into that, and we found from the FAA that that would not be allowable.
Okay, thank you, Chuck. Okay, the next question I believe is for Kip. This is from Brent Jacobs. Brent is asking, will we have access to our hangars? I'm located at West End Executive Hangars. Will our cards to enter the airport still be active? How will that process work?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I might actually look to the project team to see if there's any concerns that you think there might be for entry into the airport for the hangars. I don't know that I had thought about that until now. So fair question. And I guess let me ask both Javiation and Mead and Hunt, maybe primarily Javiation as the construction management team, to maybe provide thoughts on that as far as safety concerns or anything, if they're staying in the confines of their hangars and not in the vicinity of the airfield where the work's being done. Matt, Mike, do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure, Kip, I can speak to that. You know, we really don't have any concerns with the tenants accessing their hangars during construction. We've got a pretty well-defined access route to our work area, and there shouldn't be any cross traffic with tenants accessing the hangars there.
Okay, great. Then I think there's the answer, Brent. Sounds like that's something that we can still accommodate.
And this is Aaron Powers. I don't know. I just wanted to add, I noticed that that Brent is located in the West End Executive Hangars, which it sounds like access to his hangars would still be available, but access off of the Victoria Gate entry and exit would likely be unavailable. So you would still be able to access your hangar, but you would need to access it from another gate.
Good point, Aaron. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we have a next question from Andrew Klemish. Andrew is asking, he said he joined late, so he apologized if he misses this, but will helicopter operations be permitted in and out of non-movement areas immediately in front of the Executive West hangars? So I believe, Mike, if you can answer that, would be great.
You know, I'm going to let Erin answer that. I know she's done some coordination already with some of the helicopter traffic.
So this may be a question that we need to follow up on. Andrew, perhaps we can get in touch after this meeting. The helicopter operations are going to be allowed to continue during the period of construction. However, I would want to know exactly what non-movement area you're talking about next to the Executive Hangars West, because of the close proximity of the construction equipment, the staging area, including water supply and other construction activities. So I look forward to following up with you on this.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrew. You can, if you would like to leave your email for us, and we can, the team can follow up with you as well. Okay, moving on. This question is regarding timelines, construction timelines, from Paul Deboucher is asking, what incentives or penalties are in the contracts to ensure the timelines are adhered to?
I think that's more of a question for you from the construction schedule side.
Sure. So the contractor is subject to $9,000 per day if they fail to get the runway open within that 91 days. And then there's some additional liquidated damages also for payment to the engineer if they were to not meet that 91 calendar days.
Okay, thank you, Paul, for that question. Okay, we have a number of questions. This one, I believe, is for Kip. Tom is asking, if we prepay the whole year, will rent relief just extend the paid rent by the closed months?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question, Tom. I can tell you, you still benefit from the rent relief. We'll have to get with the county finance team to see the way they're poised to do it right now, as I understand it, is because of probably a good large number of our tenants pay each month or whatever. But so they're set up right now to go ahead and automatically credit the 4 months that the project's going on. But we'll definitely make sure that if you've prepaid, that we either give you an extension or a refund for those 4 months. And what method that'll be, I'll have to find out from county airport finance and follow up with you. So Aaron, if you'll make sure that we follow up to Tom on that one as well, that'd be great.
Okay, great. This one's also asking about tie downs at Camarillo. This is from Mark Sullivan. Will there be any extra tie downs made available at CMA? If not, what is the estimated number of tie downs available at Camarillo?
Yeah, good question, Mark. As we stated all along, sometime now for a number of months leading up to this project, we just don't have any extra tie downs at Camarillo that we're aware of anyway, that are actually real tie downs. So I think the answer to your first question is no, we're not doing project implementation of tie downs at Camarillo to do anything with this project. That was one reason that led into us going to the Board of Supervisors and asking for the ability to waive rents for these 4 months so that, prior planning could be made by those seeking to do so to be able to reposition their plane somewhere else. Camarillo's ramps already have the tie downs that they can have and accommodate, so we don't really have the ability to do that without a project in itself there. As far as the current number of tie downs available, that changes literally daily. So what I would encourage you to do there is reach out to our ops team to see where that is today. I mean, whatever I can tell you today would possibly be different tomorrow. So just if you have interest in trying to position your aircraft at Camarillo during the project, as we've stated all along, just be reaching out to our ops team and try to make a reservation for doing so, or accommodations to do so if there's those available.
Okay, I hope that answers your question, Mark. Moving on, this is another question regarding helicopter operations from Kenneth. Will helicopter operations continue to be allowed from the Executive West hangars?
I think that's the same location that I believe Aaron was talking to a few moments ago. So we'll make a general statement follow up to that. That's the area that we have a lot of the construction staging and activity going on. So we need to do a little homework there to make sure that an actual helicopter operation would not be a safety factor for both the construction and for the helicopter itself, of course. And Aaron's already promised to follow up on that. So we'll just make that a follow-up comment that we provide publicly in some type of form, either on our website or Chuck. I don't know if we've got a different platform established for follow-up questions, but if we do, maybe you can speak to that.
Yeah, we could provide the information out through eBlast. But for questions coming on, we'll look into that.
And just as a reminder, we do have the virtual guest booked that is linked in the chat. So if you did have a question that needed to be followed up with, I know Andrew had a question, go ahead and just fill that out and then our team can get back to you.
Yeah.
Okay, this next question, Kip, is for you from Mark Swanee. Executive Hangars West pays a single fee to Ventura County for rent, but is a group of 21 hangars. How will the rent relief be handled for this organization?
Yeah, so Mark, because Executive West is looked at as one consolidated tenant to the airport, the Department of Airports, that rent for that rent as paid will be waived for the 4 months. And then, your organization will need to work with your individual hangar owners, I guess is how it is probably classified in your group, to figure out, what that equation looks like on your end, because we don't get into your organization to that level. So it would be the rent would be waived for the Executive Hangar West organization, and then the organization will need to work within its own confines to figure out how that distributes out to your individual tenants.
Okay, this is a question from Brent Jacobs. I believe this is for Javiation. Is there any plans as to the taxiways getting constructed in the future?
There are plans for the taxiways to get constructed in the future. Those projects are on the airport's CIP, and grants will be pursued for those hopefully in the near future.
Okay, Mike, I think this is a question for you as well from Paul. Will the contractors repair damage to the non-movement areas if they cause any?
Yes, the contractor will be liable for any damage to existing pavement structures outside the work area, and that's actually a contractual requirement as well.
Okay, we had a follow-up question from Mark Sullivan. This is regarding hangar access. So concerning hangar access, I assume the Golden West, hangar number 2 and hangar number 3 ramps will still be unaffected. Is my assumption correct? Can tied down aircraft stay?
Yeah, I do not see any reason why that would be an issue for the aircraft being parked on the ramps. Obviously, the airport would be closed, so the runway would be closed, so those aircraft would not be able to transient out and in during that closure. But as far as those ramps, I'm not envisioning any issue with those 2 ramps. I will defer to Aaron Powers to make sure I'm not overseeing something that I don't recall in the construction plans, or to Javiation even, but I'm not envisioning a problem there.
There should be no problem. You're correct.
Okay, great. Bill is asking, will tie downs be available at Camarillo during the phases?
Yeah, we've sort of touched on that already here today, and then of course numerous times leading up to today. But you know, the tie downs are available as they are until they're full. You know, but that changes literally every day from transit aircraft and other means that we're not able to have just a set number, so to speak. But yeah, we have tie downs until they're full. I mean, so we definitely encourage you, if you have that interest, to try to be early to that and try to secure that with our leasing department and our ops department.
Okay, we have a question from Brent Jacobs. I believe this is for Javiation. He's asking, will the runway be usable during phase 2 during the day?
Yes, during the day, the runway will be available. The closures for the night work are scheduled between 10 p.m. and 8 a.m.
Okay, thank you, Mike. We have a question from Eddie. Eddie is asking, is there any general date at all we can expect the FAA grant to go through to move forward? We have many people, including tenants, at our FBO asking about the runway closure.
I'll take a stab at it, and then we've got people smarter than I on the call, so I'll take a stab and then turn it over to those folks. But the question, as I understand it, is there any general date at all we can expect the FAA grant to go forward? And yeah, I mean, we're expecting it. I think it was mentioned earlier in the meeting here that we're expecting it as early as this week. We do realize, or we have seen announcements where the money is included in their last grant disbursements that they made, they being the FAA made as a national organization in their last round of grants. So we have no reason to believe that the offer itself is not en route to us. So we believe that funding has been secured for the project, and we're just waiting now for the formality of the actual paperwork of that to come in.
And Kip, I'll add on to that. Yeah, like you mentioned, FAA did a formal announcement of grants, not all the grants, but a portion of the grants that were released just last week nationwide. And the grant for this project was included on that. So the grants typically follow within 1, maybe 2 weeks max after that. So it's very quick.
Okay, thank you for that question, Eddie. We have a question from Rodney, who is asking, how many days in advance will you notify us when the hard closure will become effective?
Well, I think we're doing that now. So we're expecting the hard closure to be August the 4th. And team that's on here, correct me if I've misstated that, but I believe that's the date we're calling the hard closure.
You are correct, Kip.
That's the one.
Okay, great. Thank you for that question, Rodney. We do have a question for you, Kip. This is from David Shaw. Will the period of our lease for those who built hangars be extended by the period needed for the construction, as we will not have use of the runway?
No, this is not an automatic prompter for lease extensions or lease negotiations for that matter. We feel good that we've been able to at least get rent waived for this. I've seen a lot of these type projects where that didn't happen, so we feel good about that. But no, this does not prompt any type of lease negotiation or lease extension.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any hands raised. As a reminder, you can raise your hand and be placed in the queue. At that point, I can unmute you. Okay, we do have a hand raised. So T, go ahead and unmute yourself when you're ready.
Was just curious if the airport access and access to hangars will be restricted if once the runways are closed down.
I missed the name on that, so I'll just try to reply openly. But we actually had a similar question like that earlier in the question period here, and we answered that in that hangar access will still be allowable. I believe, as Aaron Powers, our project manager, pointed out, our internal project manager pointed out, we will have one gate that will not be usable, and that's on, forgive me, Aaron, I think it's the, I can't remember the gate number, but it's down at the Executive West hangars, because that's going to be the primary gate for the project itself. But other than that, the other gates will be accessible for those that have hangar access, and we've determined that that would not be a factor.
Okay, I hope that answers your question, T. I do see a question in the chat. Again, you can use the Q&A function to ask our panel questions today, but I do see that we have one from Steve Ryland. This is a question for Kip. So when does the rent waivers begin? And will you reach out to tenants to show the schedule?
So the whole purpose of today is to give you the schedule. So the schedule is starting August the 4th. So we're doing that in today's platform. And therefore the rent waivers will be effective August the 4th.
Okay, we have a question from Mark Sullivan. Excuse me if I don't know the abbreviations, but all nav-aids will be turned off, right? No ILS. However, will training GPS low approaches still be permitted? Will FAA disable the WAAS system?
And I can take that, and Mike, if you want to follow up, or Kip. So during the first phase, all nav aids, like we had mentioned, will be turned off. So that's the ILS localizer. Practice instrument approaches via GPS will not be allowed. However, the tower is open, and the control Class D surface is in effect, and that's for airspace transitions and also then for the helicopter operations. But no type of instrument training will be allowed. Now, during the second phase, when it's just the nighttime closures, the nav aids will be available during the day. So the ILS will be back up and running. FAA will turn that system off each night and then turn it back on and perform their checks. So it will be available during that 2-week closure, which is just a nighttime closure after the first of the year.
All right, thanks for answering that, Chuck. Okay, we have one more question coming in. This is from Toby for perhaps Javiation can answer this. Will the airport be closed again for the taxiway rehab?
I can give that one a shot. So, you know, ideally we would have been able to reconstruct the connectors and the parallel taxiway foxtrot during the runway reconstruction to minimize the disruption to airport operations. And that's how the project was originally phased. We will have to rephase the project when we go to reconstruct the connectors. There will be portions of the connectors inside the RSA that will require a closure of the runway. We'd plan to do those most likely during the night to minimize the disruption. So there will have to be some partial closures of the runway in the future, but that's yet to be determined. And the whole connectors and parallel will need to be rephased.
Okay, thanks for answering that, Mike. There doesn't appear to be any more questions coming in. I don't see any hands raised either. So if you did have one final question, I'll wait a few more moments, but if not, we can begin to wrap up. So again, I'm not seeing anything. And again, you can leave your contact information through the virtual guest book and then visit the airport website if you have any more questions or if you're still looking for information beyond today. So there will be a lot of great information on the airport website. Okay, I'm not seeing anything else. I don't see anything. I don't see any hands raised. So Stacy, I think we are good to close out at this point.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Stevie and panelists, for answering the public questions today. So yeah, just like Stevie said, thank you again all who took the time out to participate. Thanks for hanging in there as this meeting got postponed. And again, we have about 50 participants, so that is a pretty good turnout. Please go ahead and utilize the airport website and contact info for further information, any questions you have. All of that is going to be up on the airport website. And there will also be various e-blasts that are going to be sent out kind of throughout the next phase of the project. So again, all that stuff is at your fingertips. And thank you, Aaron and Kip, for joining us today and hosting this meeting for the tenants. And with that, I think we're about ready to close out. Thanks again, everybody, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.